Our next speaker will be addressing the issue of integrating African talent into global corporations. Incidentally, I should point out that we've unfortunately lost one of our speakers, to Mr. Tolde Mariam, Chief Executive of Ethiopian Airlines, who was called into another meeting last minute, so is not able to join us today. Perhaps he may be able to join us at a later point tomorrow or so. But our next speaker is Lawrence Dechambenoit. That close enough, yeah?
Close enough.
I've tortured it enough, yeah? Okay. Lawrence is the Vice President for Corporate Relations at Rio Tinto, Africa, and he will talk to us about integrating African talent. Now, Lawrence, I think African talent means much more than individual, placing individual Africans in positions. It also means it must include the African perspective, the African approach to shaping global corporations and how they relate to Africa. So what has been the experience of Rio Tinto in this regard?
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
This okay?
Can use this phone.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank Chatham House for inviting me here today. I think it's important to have the private sector involved in some of these conversations, especially looking at the topic, because essentially where the private sector meets Africa is essentially the crossroads of interdependency between Africa and the global economy. And in that sense, it's important for us to be here. Maybe just a little bit of background before I start. Rio Tinto, as somebody you may know, is a global mining company. It's the second largest mining company in the world. Footprint is across all continents, with the bulk of our operations being in North America and Australia. And in Africa, we have operations in South Africa, Madagascar, Namibia. We do exploration in Zambia, and we also have a project in Guinea. So fairly wide kind of footprint across the continent. I think just looking at the topic of African talent in global corporations, there's a couple of issues that I'd like to highlight first before I talk about the experience of Rio Tinto. First of all, there's not that many of us. That's really, I come from the UN system before I kind of made the move from the UN system into the private sector. And when I was in the UN system, I often used to say to other Africans, well, there's not that many of you involved in public policy. I see so many in the private sector, but now being in the private sector, I actually feel fairly lonely in the private sector. There's not that many Africans, and there aren't that many Africans in senior positions. Just one, maybe a point of clarity, which I think is not that important, but within the context of this conversation is important. I'm actually not the Vice President in charge of Africa, but I'm the Vice President in charge of Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Which means that as an African, I also have responsibility for our UK headquarters, corporate governance issues and relationships with the UK government, as well as our footprint in Europe, in Brussels, and the operations that we have in France and in other places. And it's very rare for an African to be in that kind of position. And I think it kind of speaks to the recognition of Rio Tinto that diversity matters, and that bringing diverse point of views around the table is something that's important. There are a couple of issues that Africans face in the private sector and getting to any position in the private sector. And I think I'm usually a fairly candid person, so I'll be very candid today. First of all, there's a glass ceiling issue. And we often talk about the glass ceiling for gender, but there is a glass ceiling for Africans very clearly. And that's linked to a number of things. there is a perception out there that Africans are not as good as others. That's a clear perception. There's a lot of unconscious biases about the capabilities and the capacity of Africans to do the jobs to the same level of professionalism with the same kind of capacity and capabilities and strategic foresight as other colleagues. And those kind of perceptions even exist in my own organization overall. Not at the top of the organization, otherwise I probably wouldn't be sitting here, but there is a conversation going in the organization around diversity and unconscious biases because we recognize that that's an issue. And that's the first one. The second issue is a pay gap issue. And that pay gap issue, essentially, you find it at many different levels. There is a discrepancy in most multinationals between the pay levels of Africans that are recruited on the continents and Africans that are recruited or that work outside of the continent. So the kind of reverse thing is that usually you have expatriates coming from other continents. Africans, once they come back on the continent, are treated as local. And that it doesn't matter where they're educated, what their experience has been, and it essentially makes the job market for them far less competitive because on the whole, I think that Africans should be remunerated and considered like everyone else in the world. And that essentially reduces the kind of talent pool that multinationals can integrate into their companies, and that reinforces the stereotype around capabilities, level of education, etc., etc. Because the reality is, in many of our countries, when we recruit local talents, they are not as well trained as talents that have had some exposure outside of the continent. And that is linked to the issues that we face with our educational systems. Some of us, I come from Côte d'Ivoire, have had wars in the past that destroyed our educational system. So someone coming out of the University of Abidjan, unfortunately, is not as competitive as another Ivorian who would have come out of the university in the US or somewhere else. And when we recruit Africans locally, we find that they're not as competitive as others, and that reinforces the stereotype that Africans are not as good as others. That's another issue. The other issue that you have is that creates also some tensions between local and diaspora Africans. And I see that more and more in the private sector, where there's that difference, and clear difference is made between Africans coming from the diaspora and Africans who are recruited locally. Now, for us, Africans coming from the diaspora, there's a challenge. There's a challenge for us to mentor our brothers and sisters, to make sure that we pass on the capabilities and the knowledge that we have, and that we go the extra mile in making sure that the work that they deliver meets the standards of excellence that are expected by the company. The last thing is essentially around the issue of excellence. And I'll always remember this. When I started my career very early on in the UN, and I was sitting in the corridor somewhere on my first day, and at the time it was Secretary General Annan who was our SG, and saw me in the corridor and called me into his office and said, "I haven't seen you around here before. Tell me where you come from." So I said, "Well, I've just come out of Côte d'Ivoire, and I used to be in an operation in the Congo. I've just started here today." And essentially he said to me, "I'm going to say something to you, and I don't want you to take it bad. In order for you to progress here, you're going to have to work 10 times harder than anyone else. And that's going to be your reality throughout. Don't take it as a chip on your shoulder, just work like that." And that's the reality. The reality is that still today, in order for us as Africans to progress in multinationals at the same level as people from other continents, we have to work usually much harder,
we have to show our capabilities there's much more scrutiny around the level of capabilities that we have and the delivery that we have. So there's no room for error in reality. And that means that we have to constantly uphold ourselves to a certain standard of excellence, ethics, and integrity in the way that we do our job every day. Those are some of the issues that we have. Now, coming to Rio Tinto specifically, we've gone through a journey. When I got to Rio Tinto, I was essentially running Africa for a year, and after a year, they gave me another position. But that journey, I think, comes from the fact that we have quite a diverse leadership team that is younger also. We have people, our CEO is in his mid-40s. Most of our members of EXCO are in their mid-40s. There have been some very hard conversations around inclusion and diversity, and the upside of diversity, and just like you were saying earlier, diversity means bringing different points of view to the table. The organization had learned some very hard lessons in Africa because they hadn't taken African perspectives into account in the way that we were doing business on the continent. And essentially the onus was on me to show that I was bringing value to the table. And that's the reality. Once you are in a position like that, when you integrate an organization, it's not about holding the business card. It's about showing and demonstrating value every day. And as an African operating on the continent, we are able to shape our interactions with our colleagues in governments, with our colleagues in communities that we operate in very differently from the way that the interaction is shaped with colleagues from other regions. And that gives us an advantage, and it allows us very quickly to demonstrate some value and to achieve results. Because at the end of the day, it's about achieving results. But in achieving those results, the key and the rule is, and this is my personal rule, is that we always have to find the balance between the interest of our countries, our communities, our brothers and sisters on the ground, and the interest of a private company. And there's a way of doing so, because private companies on the whole, at least I know my company, wants to make sure that we're not just doing good and well, but we're also doing well for the communities that we operate in, and making sure that the business that we run also benefits the countries that we're in. And that is only possible once you're able to have a very clear, honest dialogue with your stakeholders, and a dialogue that is a peer-to-peer dialogue. And I find that being an African, I'm much more able to have that very honest, open conversations with stakeholders in Africa around the challenges that they face, around their aspirations, around what we can offer to them, and around what we can do together. So I'll leave it there, and I'll open it up to questions afterwards. Thank you very much.